Well, a very good morning, Wigan. Nearly forgot where I was for a minute there. Good morning, Wigan. I've just been doing a question of the day survey, and you'll not believe the results of this. I'm quite surprised. I asked the question, did Jesus rise from the grave? And as you can see, the votes are in, and 60% of Wigan said yes, Jesus did rise from the grave, and 40% said no, Jesus didn't rise from the grave. So I'm kind of encouraged by that Wigan thinks that Jesus did in fact rise from the dead, the majority of Wigan anyway. That still leaves 40% who don't though. And my friend here's got some leaflets which she will gladly give you if you'd like to know a little bit more and become one of the 60% instead of one of the 40%. But it was quite encouraging that, because it's Easter time. We're looking forward to opening our Easter eggs, aren't we? And seeing what we've got in them. And we sometimes forget what Easter's all about, don't we? Forget that those eggs that we break open is to remind us that Jesus broke the grave. He broke out of his tomb. He rose again from the dead. And we celebrate Easter every year. And yet not everybody, as we can see, actually does believe that Jesus rose from the dead. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, I can be absolutely sure, without a shadow of a doubt, that Jesus rose from the dead. Now, how can I be so sure? How can I be so sure? Let me tell you, let's look at the evidence, shall we? Because either he did rise from the dead or he didn't rise from the dead. But if he didn't rise from the dead, there's got to be some explanation for what actually took place. Now, one suggestion that has been afforded is that Jesus didn't actually die. And he just recovered 3 days later and out he came. But the problem with that is no one survives crucifixions. Certainly not after being whipped 39 times with a cat of nine tails, which was like a rope with a whip with loads of shards of metal in it that would rip chunks off your back. Some people didn't even make it to the crucifixion site. And then he was nailed to a cross with two thieves on either side of him. And he died after 6 hours up there. And to prove he was dead, to make sure he's dead, what they would normally do, the Romans, they'd break the legs of the guys who were on the cross. So they couldn't push up to breathe anymore, and then they'd die instantly. That's what they did with the two thieves either side of Jesus. But to fulfill Scripture, which says that none of his bones will be broken, that was a prophecy about Jesus before he came to walk the earth as a man. Instead of his legs being broken, they thrust a spear through his side to check whether he's dead. And instead of blood splurting out because his heart was still pumping, blood just fell out, poured out, mixed with water, which proves that he actually had a heart attack. So he was dead. And they put his body in the tomb. There's no disputing that. He was dead. So, did Jesus really rise from the grave? We've proved that he was dead. What about some of the other theories about whether he rose from the grave or not? Well, all the disciples said that he did. So there's a really great piece of evidence. Now, the thing is this. If he didn't rise from the grave, then those disciples saying that he did causes a bit of a problem. Now, does that mean they hallucinated seeing him risen from the dead? And it was like some kind of ghostly apparition or something? Well, he ate food and drank in front of them. So I'd say no. What if they hallucinated that? And it wasn't an apparition, but they hallucinated seeing a real man there. Well, the problem with that is when you hallucinate, you have a hallucination on your own, and someone else have a different hallucination. But the idea that all 11 disciples would all hallucinate the same thing is pretty crazy, isn't it? That surely could not have taken place. So surely he did in fact rise from the dead. These disciples really saw him risen. Now, there's another theory, and it's the theory that the disciples stole his body, and that's how they managed to fake that Jesus rose from the dead. But the thing is this, right? There was 16 Roman soldiers guarding his tomb. How did the 11 disciples get past the 16 Roman soldiers? Now, the story goes that was perpetuated by the Jews who didn't want people to hear that Jesus had risen from the dead, so much so they ended up crucifying and killing some of these disciples later on, they pervaded the story that they'd stolen his disciple, the disciple had stolen Jesus' body while the soldiers were asleep. Now, the problem with that is, if you're a Roman soldier and you fall asleep on duty when you're doing something like guarding a tomb, well, will cause great chaos if the body from the tomb gets stolen. You would have been put to death. Now, all these soldiers survived. None of them were put to death, and they went home with bags of money in their back pockets, bribing them to say, yes, the disciple stole his body. And the other problem with that is, if they really did steal his body, and this is the biggest problem of the lot, why would they then go around saying to everybody that Jesus is risen, we've seen him, at the cost of their own lives? Because that's what happened. Jesus rose from the dead. They saw him risen from the dead. They went around telling everybody that Jesus had risen from the dead. And they were told, if you carry on speaking about the resurrection, we're going to have you put in prison and then put to death. And they said, well, we're going to carry on speaking about the resurrection. Now, why would they do that if it was all a lie, if they'd stolen his body? You see, nobody dies for a lie. Well, let me rephrase that. Nobody dies for what they know to be a lie. There are people who die for a lie. There are people from a particular religious group, I'm not going to mention any names, who will blow themselves up thinking that they're going to go straight to paradise as a result of taking out the lives of Christians and Jews. I think you know what I'm talking about and who I'm referring to. Well, they are dying for a lie, aren't they? Because that's not true. That will not happen. But nobody will die for what they know to be a lie. See, those people, that particular religion, they don't know. They're not sure that they're dying for a lie. They don't know they're dying for a lie. But if you're one of the disciples and you stole Jesus' body, you know you're dying for a lie by speaking about the resurrection. So they were faced with a choice. Shut up preaching about Jesus and the resurrection and live, or carry on speaking about the resurrection of Jesus and die. They carried on speaking about the resurrection of Jesus and they died. They were killed. They were put to death. No one dies for what they know to be a lie. They saw Jesus risen from the dead. They saw him. It's the only explanation. And that's why, and Wigan knows it, 60% of people in Wigan believe that Jesus rose from the grave. So you believe it as well. And that's really encouraging. But have you made that final step? Because the problem is this. Yes, there's a God, and he's good. Yes, Jesus is God. Yes, he came down to this earth. Yes, he showed his love for us by dying on the cross. Yes, he showed that he beat the grave by rising again from the dead. But do you know what? There's also an enemy who's not good, who's bad, and his name is the devil. And even though you know this, even though you know that Jesus rose from the dead, look at this, 60% of Wigan said that Jesus rose from the grave. Even though you know it, the enemy will keep you busy. And he'll do anything to stop you from committing your life to the one who gave his life for you. He will stop at nothing till you are completely distracted or thinking other things, or even thinking, do you know what? Yeah, because I put a tick on the yes side that day in Wigan when that street preacher was asking me for a vote. That'll get me to heaven. It won't. Putting a tick on this side will not do that. What does get us to heaven? It's not just believing in Jesus. It's not even believing that he died and rose again. It's committing your life to him and saying, do you know what? Instead of going my way, I'm going to go God's way. Instead of living for myself, I'm going to live for him. And that is what gets you into heaven. It's by coming to the cross and saying, thank you for dying for my sins. Thank you for dying for all the wrong things I've done. Please forgive me and help me to follow you. And when you do that, you will find a home in heaven. You will find your sins forgiven. You will find a life on this earth that is worth living, an abundant life, and a life everlasting in eternity. And the enemy is trying to distract you from all of that. And you're so close, Wigan. Look at this. You're so close But you just need to make that final step of not just believing, because even the devil believes. Not just believing, but committing your life to him. And so many of you will be like, I don't want to do that. I want to live my own way. I think my plan for my life is better than God's plan for my life. I want to enjoy myself. I want to live a bit. I want to have fun. Let me tell you, friends, some of the things that you think is fun will just end up leaving you empty inside. You'll search for love and you'll end up nowhere. You'll search for life and you'll end up nowhere. You search for a great career and a job and you'll find out that it does not satisfy. The only thing that satisfies in this life is Jesus. It's coming to him and having that relationship with him, the relationship that is like no other relationship, a love like no other. You'll be loved by nobody as much as you can be loved by Jesus. And he demonstrated that love through his death on the cross for you. That's what Easter's all about. It's about the death and the resurrection of Jesus Christ. It's not about eggs. It's not about Easter bunnies. It's about Jesus. Will you come to him today? Will you find the one who bought your life, paid for your life, rose again, beat the grave so that you too can beat the grave? I pray that you'll come to him today.